And so, me being a nurse, I was able to read those things. And, I contacted the medical examiner, who incidentally called me himself before I, ordered any of those documents, called me himself telling me that my son that he had not died of an accident, that he had not died of suicide, and that he had not died of any sort of medical emergency. And he told me specifically, because I told him that people are spreading rumors that he had a heart attack and died. So I wanted to hear from his mouth. And he cut me off even. He said, listen, don't listen to people. People don't know. I know. Nothing was wrong with your son's heart. Yet when I get the autopsy, he has something different documented. And so when I spoke with him again and I say, hey, why'd you do that? I already know why he did it. I know where he got the information, but you didn't know I know. And so I asked him about it, and he said, well, we didn't find anything, but somebody told me, but I don't know who. So, me being who I am, I went over his head. And I went to the New Jersey State Chief Medical Examiner and gave him a thick packet of all evidence, proof, tangible, text messages, photographs, official documentation, all sorts of things. And of course, I sent him, which he could get on his own, but I sent him the autopsy. I sent him emails and correspondence between me and different departments. And he went and reassessed the science on his own, along with all of the evidence that I sent him. And he says, nope, there's no evidence that he died from a drowning. And remember, with drowning, you don't only get liquid in your lungs, which he didn't have any of that. Other things happen. Because there's liquid in your lungs. Remember, drowning means asphyxiation from, inhaling water. There's none of that. How do you asphyxiate? It has to go through your nasal passageway and or your mouth. Nothing. No liquid. No debris. There's a froth that foams up due to gases and such, from like a chemical, like a chemical transformation that happens. That wasn't there. The position of his body, drowners have a certain position to their body. My son didn't have that. There's a great many things. Also, if you go to my blog, beyond-clouds.org/blog, there's a photograph of what my son's face looked like when he was found. None of this is conducive to a drowning, or, they said, wow, he was, I asked the medical examiner about that too. He said, oh, his eye, it was just sunken in, and, it may have just decomposed. It's probably decomposed. Like he wasn't giving me any definitive answers or anything. But that makes no sense because, one, when you see the socket, nothing is sunken in there at all. And also, why would one eye decompose and not the other? There's just a lot of things that was like, so, what I've been doing is fighting for justice for Two Clouds. It is a fact that he was murdered. It is a fact that he was murdered over greediness, over land and money. It is the fact that he was murdered out of jealousy because, as far as they were concerned, even though there are a lot of dark-skinned Ramapo, they considered my son a fake, that he was a black guy pretending to be Indian, even though he is enrolled in the tribe. But because he didn't grow up there in the mountains, they would say stuff like that to him. They would call him a Hollywood Indian because they were jealous that he was getting, so much recognition from these white folks that they've been struggling their whole lives to get respect from and have never been able to get, So it was just, they had issues with him. He was the only one standing in the way of misappropriation of land up there. It's just a lot of things that were happening. And unfortunately, the people in his extremely tight circle decided that they would plot against him with others from a few other nations and murder him. And they believed for some reason that I would just sit back and not do anything about it. They thought that they could sneak up on him, murder him. Let me tell you, there's no way that these guys who I know did it. There's no way that they could have done it alone. And that they could have just walked up on him. My son was an extremely skilled fighter in different styles. So he studied karate, he studied bendo, he studied capoeira, he studied kickboxing. He was a boxer. He you couldn't just run up on him. And he's from Newark, he's from the streets. Unlike these cats up there. And all of his friends who know him, who grew up with him and stuff, and have seen him fight and things, they're like, so yeah, there's a lot going on with this. But that's why I'm here on this social media, to help bring awareness, not only to what happened to my son, but what is happening to indigenous people everywhere, what is happening to our protectors everywhere. Our youth, who we convince to stand and fight for the people, are being murdered, and no one's doing anything about it. Not for real doing anything about it. And if indigenous people, indigenous groups are not federally recognized, they get even less done. My son, although we are Afro-Indigenous and we identify as black racially, and ethnically we identify as Afro-Indigenous, because Two Clouds was enrolled in the Indian tribe, a state-recognized Indian tribe, the government does not recognize him as Indian. And they also don't actually identify him as non-Indian. And so there's no space within the rules and the laws for people like him. They just don't exist. And so I've been doing a whole hell of a lot of things behind the scenes, which will create a willing, which will help indigenous people on a whole. You can't just go around killing people because you don't like what they're doing. Especially all these people who claim to be advocates and allies for indigenous rights activists and indigenous people overall. What I've learned is that so many of them are full of shit, whether they're indigenous or not. They're just not. it's quite easy, and we know this from different realities, that people most often talk about who they are and what they are, which is easy to do when you don't have to prove it. But it's when you have to prove it and then you don't, even though you have platforms and thousands of people who you can call on to help push a movement forward, and you don't, that's because you're ill-intended. So we're going to eventually do something about those kind of people too. But for now, my son will be used as leverage to help bring the movement forward, to help gain basic human rights for all indigenous people, but for sure indigenous people who are not recognized by the federal government. My son was just minding his business, living off the land, about to go back to school. He would have been teaching, building, doing his thing, but in a very closed environment. And they didn't like that. They didn't like that. They thought that they could kill him, and that they could, and they thought that they could kill his mission and the things that he could do for the people and would do for the people. They thought that they could kill all of that by murdering him, dumping him, plotting with the police and the county government. But all they did was bring him to the people, bring him globally.
You know, anyone can scare me, but no one can intimidate me. You know, and the fact of the matter is, if something were to happen to me, you know,